Hi, there's so much we can learn from the Jewish feast presented in Leviticus 23 that once you start learning about them, you'll be amazed. This video is about the first 3 Jewish feasts which were sort of celebrated together, like we celebrate Christmas and New Year about the same time. At the end, I'll draw some conclusions that might really surprise you. The first feast, Passover, was celebrated on the 14th day of Nisan. Nisan, by the way, is not a Japanese car, but the first month in the Jewish year. Now, it doesn't perfectly overlap with our Western calendar. The Jewish calendar even has an entire leap month. So imagine trying to put that together. In the USA, there are 2 types of feasts. Ones which start at a specific calendar day like New Year's, but could be any weekday. The same with these feasts. Now, this first feast, Passover, could be done on a Monday, Thursday, Sunday, or whatever day it happens to fall on. Other feasts are like our Thanksgiving, always on a Thursday, not on a specific day of the month. Moreover, it's also important to understand that the day starts on the evening when the sun goes down, not midnight. Going back, at the Passover, the Jewish people would celebrate that they were liberated from Egypt. They had really specific rules. The house couldn't have any leaven inside, so during the early spring, they would clean their whole house. That's where we get the term spring cleaning from, by the way. The Passover is celebrated when we celebrate that Jesus died on the cross for us. It was during the Passover meal that Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper. Now, this was in the evening, so it was the next day already. So Jesus died on the cross during the Passover. In this particular year, the 14th of Nisan took place on a Friday. But again, remember the Friday started on Thursday sunset. So the Passover meal was done on our Thursday evening. But that's part of the Jewish Friday. You kind of have to wrap your mind around that. Watch this video to really understand that. The next day was the 15th of Nisan. It's the Feast of Matzah, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It is celebrating that God gave us food out of the ground like grain. Now, Jesus died on the cross at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. That was the time of one of the daily sacrifices in the temple. So they had to get Jesus off the cross before the Sabbath, which would start around 6 o'clock on that Friday. So he was buried right before the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or the Shabbat, because they couldn't work on the Shabbat. So Christ was buried right before the Feast of Unleavened Bread, where they would celebrate that God would give out of the ground. Do you see how this perfectly fits? Now, the next feast is the Feast of First Fruits, also called Habiharim. It is celebrated on the first Sunday after unleavened bread. They would offer the first part of the harvest to God. It's a huge step of faith. They would show that they trusted the Lord for the rest of the harvest. Because if the harvest didn't bring any more fruit, then they would have given everything. I made a video on that. Watch this video to understand that better. Now, when Christ died, this feast was done immediately following on that Sunday, the 16th of Nisan. Many years, the Sunday following didn't immediately follow the 15th of Nisan or the day of unleavened bread. That just happened to be that year. Again, remember, the Sunday started on Saturday evening. So Christ rose from the dead on the Feast of First Fruits. So here's an amazing thing. Christ rose from the dead anytime after that Saturday sunset. It says that the women looked for him early in the morning, but he could have been alive for 10 hours already. Now, Paul also refers to this feast in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 20. But now is Christ risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that slept. In that same chapter, Paul defines the gospel as the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So, think about it. Death is pictured in the Passover. Burial is pictured in the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And finally, the resurrection is pictured in the Feast of the First Fruits. It all fits together. God bless you. Bye-bye.